Hello and welcome to the Midweek Conversation at First Baptist Sweetwater. I'm Jerry Hendricks. I'm here with T. Hamilton, and we're getting excited about things that are coming up.
Yes. We got a whole big
All
week.
kinds of things. It's a big week.
Whole big week.
And by the time this drops, some of the things will have already passed, but it's still an exciting week as we kind of turn the corner on our calendar towards Lent.
Yeah. One of the best times of the year.
It is a great time. It's
Advent's
a great
good.
time.
I love Advent, but Lent has become a very meaningful part of my spiritual journey.
Yeah, it is really good, and we have several things that are coming up that are a part of that. First is Shrove Tuesday. Tell us a little bit about that.
Shrove Tuesday, we're using up all the sugar and all the flour in the church, and we're making pancakes.
Okay.
And it's going to be a good time. It was the first time was last year, and well received. But pancakes are always well received.
Right. If you look into that a little bit, that's kind of what you find is that people would use Tuesday as a time to empty their house of things that would
Might go bad.
serve as temptation, I guess. And so in preparation for that and celebration, we just enjoyed, last year anyways, the first time, really enjoyed just being together and eating pancakes and having dinner together.
It's a really good time to start that conversation of what does Lent look like for me?
Right.
Because if you wait till Ash Wednesday to do it, because that's an evening service, you've waited too long.
Right.
And so starting that conversation earlier in your life and with your family, it's helpful. So I think Shrove Tuesday, that's what we found accidentally last year.
Right. And I think yes, we did. And I think for folks that are new to Ash Wednesday, or even those who practice that or practice Lent in their life during this period, we would all kind of find ourselves in that place where we really not done some deep contemplation about how we might want that period to work out in our life. And so for some things, it may be too late if you wait till Tuesday. For instance, you and I have done devotionals in the past that we've read through that period. Last year I read
Unvarnished Jesus.
a book. No, I didn't read that one. I read a different one.
Well, never mind then.
Yeah.
That's what I read last year.
Yeah, I was determined to finish N.T. Wright book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
N.T. Wright.
I worked through that
One of our
one.
good friends.
Yes, and so, but for most of the things that we think about, as far as those, routine or reminders that are in our routine, whether it's a change in the way that we eat or if it's a discipline that we start, there's still plenty of time for us to kind of turn the corner and start thinking about that. So it's a good period of time for a person's faith journey. And it's one of those seasons, and I don't know why this is something that has stuck with me. It is a long season. And, seasons that we experience in the calendar, in the Christian calendar, and in church are really all sort of relatively short seasons.
Right.
But this one is enduring, and you need to be, I think, prepared for that in the way that you choose to either sacrifice or to start something new. So
We were a couple years in before we figured out it was 40 days plus Sundays.
right, yes.
We're like, wait, what? Because we just trust
that.
everybody that said it's 40 days, and we never counted it.
Right. So anyway, then we'll start a series of messages on the through the Lenten season, and you'll be preaching that first one on the first Sunday in March.
Yeah, second Sunday of Lent, but first Sunday in March, yes.
Yeah. So anyways, this Sunday we'll be wrapping up the series that we started on relationships, iron sharpens iron, and this one will be just a little bit different, but not just because we're doing so many things, but the message itself is a little different, a little diversion from what we've done the first 3 weeks. So it's one that I feel like that we just kind of stumbled into something very unique as far as our schedule and my retirement schedule and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so really excited to be able to do that on Sunday.
So is this whole series that you've been doing with relationships comes from the book by Leonard Sweet? Are there any others that you could see that you would want to flesh it out and become a longer series as you've read the book?
From his book?
Because you only picked 4 because of the way
Right.
it fit, but or is it something that you've been kind of working in some of that along the way also?
No, I thought it would be the kind of thing that I would work some of those into, and it wasn't. And again, I wasn't crazy about my language Sunday with it referring to it as a VIP, but he was using a language of Yoda. And so I go, yeah, I'm not there, but
Yoda might not resonate with everybody.
and so, but the one, and some of them, like even the one Sunday, the text that I read, we've done several times since I've been here. Mm-hmm. There are others where I think that we try to, in looking at them, there were passages that I'd done before frequently. Right. But the one that stood out was, said everyone, and he would, I think titles of chapters, everyone needs a, and he would describe that characteristic, and then it would be attributed to everyone needs a Peter or a Paul.
Right.
And he goes, everyone needs a Zacchaeus. Everyone needs a reject. He referred to him as a reject, and I go, that one would be real intriguing to do.
But that's one of your favorite passages.
Oh yeah, that's a great passage. The one I chose to do is he chooses a place instead of a person, and for me that was real fitting to the moment that we have Sunday of the place of Sweetwater, the place of First Baptist Sweetwater, and so I'm looking forward to that. I know that the time will be brief Sunday probably to share that, since we're doing some other things, but it'll be good.
We're doing some other things. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, it'll be great. So looking back on this past Sunday, one of the things that I decided,
we kind of went out of order. We went
I know. I have.
This is like a Yoda-esque thing.
And I had a cheat sheet here in front of us, a script to follow. But one of my favorite sayings was by Steve Jobs on a commencement address at Stanford University, and he said that we can't connect the dots looking forward, but we can connect the dots looking backward. Mm-hmm. And so Sunday was one of those experiences where I wanted to acknowledge that there's something that's going on in the faith community in our nation, specifically the revival at Asbury College or Asbury Seminary in Kentucky. And so I think I may not have been clear enough in an explanation. I acknowledged, I think, that not everyone may be aware that there's been something unique going on, but I thought I would use just a moment here to acknowledge that and talk through that just a little bit. We commented this morning that before we podcast that there's a blog already from Kerry Newhoff that's out about his just his thoughts on what's going on there. And as I reflected on what I shared Sunday, I let more of that filter into what I was going to say than what I had planned. But I think it's a moment, when we look at our faith over a long period of time, there are moments where we can put a marker in something significant that happened. And I do believe, based on connecting the dots in prior generations, that this is going to be one of those moments. And so it may not have showed up on your social media feed. You may not be on social media, but it is something that would encourage you to research and to find out what's going on there. It is spread to other campuses, and it's just a real neat movement of God, I believe, in the lives of students and hopefully in the life of the church.
Yeah.
So,
from what you said Sunday, it made me think about just like the question, how many movements of God have been killed or negated because of the skeptic Pharisee in our own life?
Right.
That we look at it so skeptical, and we gotta criticize everything, and we don't wait and just see. And sometimes God just says, watch, be a part. And you don't have to enter into everything just automatically assuming it's a problem.
Yeah.
So, and that's coming from both sides.
Right. And I think that for one, we've not stated anything here publicly prior to Sunday.
Right.
And so as of Sunday, it's been going on for 11 days and gone on to other campuses. And so the things that you read from people who have attended have talked about what a simple movement it is, and yet very profound. And even from those who are waiting in line outside of the chapel to get in for a time to be in the chapel.
Right.
And so I think those things are worth noting. And I guess, what I would say, and just like the illustration I used Sunday about an experience with our student ministry when I was in Abilene, is that this is not a moment that we try to squeeze and make it longer or to make it last. It's you go back to the Transfiguration.
Mm-hmm.
It's real easy to say, let's just, I'll build a couple of tabernacles,
right.
a few altars, 3 altars. And that wasn't the intent for that moment.
Right.
And didn't want to be caught up in that one thing, but there was a greater thing happening. And I believe that's where we are, is that there's something greater that will come from this. And then there's too many things that, as you think about it, the potential of this, and then also look at connecting the dots in our past, there's so many things that you're just curious about.
Right.
One of the posts that I read talked about the number of students who were repenting, confessing some pretty deep sin. They were praying. They were singing without having anybody. Apparently, it's not led from the stage a whole lot. It's pretty just a very calm spontaneity. But then the one that caught my attention was a number of people surrendering to ministry. Well,
and what has been our gap lately?
Is it ironic? Yeah, is it ironic that we've been talking? I say we. Our church has been talking for months, and then also our denomination, how that there's not any new pastors and ministers. So in looking back, I've started to put together some of the pieces. I went back and listened to a Mars Hill podcast that kind of described the Jesus movement, which I've referenced here before because of that podcast and because of Pastor Brian Zahn,
right.
Who credits the Jesus movement to his commitment, and it was one of those times. And I think, there's going to be there's something that's going to be different because of this experience, and more than just for those who were there, it's going to make a difference in the church.
Right.
And so what Mars Hill podcast was talking about was really how the church started to change as a result of those revivals and that movement. And so it would make one wonder, in curiosity, what changes need to be made in the church.
Well, let me tell you, if there's one group that loves change, it is definitely the church.
Case in point. Yeah, yeah, good example there.
Yeah, that's been one of the things that I think is, I think the unknown is what scares people, and so then they look at things critically, like this revival, and they want to poke holes in it because we're scared of the unknown, what God might do, when we should be celebrating what God might do.
Well, and exactly, and when you're looking back, the skepticism around the 70s, the 1970s Jesus movement it really kind of centered around hippies. But one of the things that's, I think, one comparison historically is that I like, or that I've noticed, is that the country was at a time of division. The Vietnam War was controversial. They were wrapping up, at least getting out of there. Civil rights was still a big issue, and there were riots over that. And so a divide was created.
Right.
And then this movement happened. And so you look back at our most recent history. We had COVID, very divisive time,
right,
in the life of our country. Politically, it's divisive.
Oh yeah, there's one side or the other. There's no in between.
And so I find it interesting that the timing of it. But I think coming back to how a person should approach it, I think what we're hearing and sensing is that it's best, I think, to approach it with a sense of curiosity. I would approach it prayerfully, praying for these students that are nearer these experiences, and then also I would pray for it repentantly. I think that if we were to step back and say, well, why wouldn't we see this happening in more places once this movement has started. And my answer would be as our unwillingness to repent. I mean, because that's how that's what's triggered this in the first place.
Right.
And and then too, I think the heartbreaking reality for me in this is that how the movement and most of these movements has centered around young people.
Right.
Young people only. I know I'm not heartbroken that it's centered around young people,
Right.
but adults are for whatever reason we're not wired to even long for it. It doesn't seem to me, and so I think it's something that we should be curious about. I think it's something that we should long for personally, and obviously I don't believe that you need to that it is not only it's counterproductive, but it's not. You don't even go down a path of trying to recreate that somewhere.
Right.
I think you have to create. And the other word that I read recently, I think this was from Mike Cosper, who narrated the Mars Hill podcast, that one of the things that he kept noticing was humility, and hearing that word. And so it's not apparently from people who we would respect. It's not something that's manufactured or conjured up, but it's a very oversimplified experience that seems to be permeated with this humility that people have. And you can go back and we've been talking about that, how people are looking for authenticity in the church, and humility is going to lead us towards that kind of transparency that we need and authenticity that people desire.
Right.
So,
well, I think you said it best. We can't recreate this, and I think too often in church life, we look at other places and we say, "Man, what is the formula for doing that here?"
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, the formula is seeking God to move and being willing to put aside your comfort, to put aside your routine, to put aside all your own stuff that you've become accustomed to as the people of God, and say, okay, maybe God wants to do something different. And maybe there's something God wants me to do different.
Right.
And so then we focus on that as opposed to trying to find the formula to make it happen. It's not a prayer Jabez thing.
Right. Oh, yeah. I looked at that. There's a movie coming out that's going to be talking about the Jesus movement. It comes out on Ash Wednesday.
Okay.
That Wednesday night. I think it's going to be interesting to see for more people to be able to connect the dots. Obviously, I've been intrigued by this because the Jesus movement had a profound effect on my life as well. One of the things I was going to say is that in the history of the previous one, there was a lot of charismatic influence in that one. And so that would be, I don't know that, I think worship is so different now. The way that we worship, it's a far more emotional worship. I don't know that it would be centered, because obviously those who are not charismatic would throw theological stones at that movement. Right. And so there was some of that at that period of time. But I can remember listening to some of those key figures. John Wimber was one of them, and Chuck Smith was the other. And I think the movie is actually about Chuck Smith's church. I'm waiting to see. But I used to listen to them on cassette tape.
What are those?
Yeah. So I was, I was a part of a group that felt that the overflow of some of that, even in Mundy, Texas, even in a small town.
Right.
Of course, it's quite different that way.
Right.
Than Southern California and these just burgeoning churches at that particular time. And that was really historically the kind of the start of the church growth movement. They said that in the 1990s there were 300 mega churches in the United States, and as of last year now there's over 1,800. And so.
And what defines a mega church? Is it over 3,000?
That they didn't talk about that because I know those numbers have changed.
It's based on a number limit, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's in the multiple thousands.
Yeah.
Once you get to that level. So.
But 300 to 1,800.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. How fast that grew, and and then we have I think it played a role in the way that we worship today.
Mm-hmm.
There's been several movements probably since then. I mean, no, there's been a lot of movements since then, but they've just been different.
Right.
I was talking to someone about last week was even the Experiencing God booklet and small groups. I think I consider that a movement. And because it had a profound effect on a large number of people and in
Right.
a large number of churches. When I was a teenager, we were part of a lay renewal movement, and I don't know if it was spearheaded, what denominations spearheaded it, but it was a movement that was led by lay people, where honestly it's similar to a Disciple Now sort of.
Oh, okay.
A group of lay people would come into a church, and then they would lead small group discussions and have some sermons. But anyways, it's exciting to see, and it's exciting to see some kids really discovering something new, and I hope that we can too.
Yeah, definitely.
So this Sunday, like I said, we'll be talking about God's call to us in Sweetwater as a part of this community, and how that, not so much about my backstory on how I got here, but definitely the sense that that we need to understand that God has us in a place for a purpose. And so I'm looking forward to that, discussing that. So
Good.
anyways, it'll be a big day. We're going to have a party afterwards. And
Yeah, we are.
then it'll be good. So look forward to seeing you this Sunday at 10:30.
See you then.